One, two, three. Okay, perfect. Yeah. David. David
Matthew
Kelly.
Matthew Suggett.
Oh my God. We have arrived. We're here.
I feel like we've been building to this moment our entire friendship. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's long overdue. It's something, and also cheers to you. I
Cheers.
know we got a little something. The
Mm.
boy. Ugh, oh
Mm.
yeah. Uh, David. David. Where should we even start? I do want to give just a little kind of shed some light to who you are, to me. Um, this pretty much like this podcast, everything that I've done up until this point, including the podcast, including all of my music, has been you've been a vital pillar in
Oh.
my coming of an artist, my coming to my origin story, and we we've had quite a ride. The ride is still in process, in progress, and I just can't be more thankful to have someone such as yourself in my life, and as a mentor and as a person that has witnessed many evolutions of myself, and for me to witness evolutions of you. Yeah, man to man, brother to brother. I thank you so much for joining. That was a long jerk off right
I'm
there.
I'm getting verklempt over here. Look, man, you mean the world to me. We've known each other for like over a decade now, which is
Mm-hmm.
crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think as I get older, friendships become kind of fewer and more far between. So the relationships that I still have from the time we spent together, but especially the one that I have with you, um, I just get so like I'm hyped every time I see a text from you, or like we're doing something together musically, or we're figuring out like how I'm gonna make you the biggest artist in the world. Every time I'm doing something with you. So yeah, this means a lot to me. I think this is officially my first podcast. All
Yes, broke you in. Good, good, good. And it's not gonna be the last. I know that much because um, I wouldn't be surprised if you just got hit from the woodwork. Uh, give the people some background. Who
okay,
who you are, where you come from. Yeah, just kind of the origin story from your end.
you got
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So for those listening, my name is David Kelly. Um, I am 40 years old recently, which I still can't believe. I am a proud father of two really beautiful children, Isley and Holland. I am a grateful husband. My wife is Danielle. And you've known me from before any of that happened, especially the turning 40 part. So, um, yeah, I currently work as I'm the head of music at 2K. I work under the partnerships and licensing team there, and we kind of shape the strategy for all things music and video games that 2K publishes. Um, I especially enjoy working on NBA 2K, which I know most people are familiar with, but that's really where we kind of let our light shine. And I guess how I got there was a kind of a wild trip. I definitely didn't have a clean path. Like I didn't go to school for that and then immediately jump into the field. I am from a very small town in Colorado called Pagosa Springs. It's probably population 15,000 now. It was 7,000 when I was growing up there. It's in the middle of the Rocky Mountains. There is nothing else around for about an hour in every direction. So it was an interesting way to grow up, because I grew up in a small town. I knew from a very early age, probably about the time I was 11 and 12, and started skateboarding and listening to music and paying attention to what was happening like outside of my little world. I knew really early I had to get out of there. So I knew that, like, yeah, the day I graduated and when I turned 18, I was going to light out. And so, yeah, that took me back to California for the second time. I had done a little stint growing up there. I landed in Long Beach. I was working for a skate and snowboard retailer in the mall, and slinging skateboards and playing music and figuring out what was going on. Um, that led to me uh, working in a clothing store, like a super hype beastie, fashion-y clothing store called BB Harris. While I was there, there was a guy that was hanging art for an art show, and he said, "I think you're underserved here. You want to come work with me in the art museum?" So I went to go work in the art museums in Southern California for a while. I did exhibition design and lighting design, and was a prep. I hung art shows, and then from there, I kind of like turned what had been up until that point kind of a semi-serious music uh, yearning into an actual job. I started doing composing on the side, and the composing led to doing music supervision, which led to me doing music supervision for a little brand called GoPro. And then GoPro called me one day and said, "Hey, we think we'd like to hire you as our music supervisor, but you'd have to move up to San Francisco." And at that time, the girl I was dating lived in San Diego, but she told me, she's like, "Look, I got to go back to my Bay Area roots. I'm going to move up to San Francisco." This was 2 weeks before I got the GoPro call, and I went, "Yeah." I told Brad at GoPro, I was like, "Yeah, I'll be there in a week." So I followed that girl.
For folks that don't know, Brad was like creative director at the time. Maybe not even at the time. I think this was like early, right? Like what time frame are we
This
talking about
was
here?
2010. So I don't even know if he was
Wow.
like, I don't even know if any of us had positions.
Right.
They were, it was a real cast of characters. There's Brad Schmidt, who was eventually the senior creative director over there, Jordan Miller, Abe Kislevitz, who is, I mean, just world famous film boy now. Who else is in there? Yara, our producer. And then, gosh, just a bunch of other people. But like the homie crew was definitely there in a little office in Half Moon Bay, in California, kind of 30 minutes below the city. And yeah, man, I had no idea at that time that was kind of like going to be the start of a lot of things. But that is when I specifically met you. And I think the day I came on board, I talked to Jordan and Brad and said, "Hey, what kind of music have you guys been using? What kind of deals have you been doing up until this point?" And they said, "We are, we've been emailing artists that we really love and asking them if we can use their music in exchange for cameras." And I went, "Huh, that doesn't sound like any music licensing I've ever heard of, but cool. Can you introduce me to some of these artists?" And one of the ones that just stood out from like the get-go, like on videos that had already been made, was this artist named Insightful. And I don't even remember. I think I reached out to you and just kind of started saying, "Hey, man, can we use more of your songs? I want to put actual music licenses in place." Um, and then from there, my history is a little fuzzy, but I think you had come in at one point to the office, even just to visit, and everybody was geeking out that there was a real artist in the GoPro office. And then,
I remember early on we hit it off like just via email.
oh,
There was like it was just I don't know. It we just clicked from the emails. Like the tone of your emails were just so nice and kind, you know? And I think at the time, like to go back a little bit, like at the time it was like GoPro was a very crude company for the most part. It was like kind of people that were filming were wearing a ton of hats and kind of doing a multitude of things. So you came in to kind of like clean up and get everyone's act together in terms of really making the music side of the business legit and um, kind of taking it to the next level, if you will. And I do remember, I believe the first point of contact was Abe Kislevitz at the time,
Yeah.
who who is who was kind of more so like a film person, but then they were trading. I think it was Hero Twos or Hero Ones at the time. And at the time, I was in college, and he would, hey, we want to use this song, and like we'll give you a camera. What's your address? I'd get the camera as a payment. The song would go up whenever. I think it would go out like yesterday, and very not the way things like not a legit thing, but at the time it was like it was great. Like I would flip the camera on Craigslist and then buy groceries with the money that I got from it, which was like around at the time it was like $250 or
Yeah.
like $300 or something like that. And then you came in and then we clicked, and then it just became like a really, it got serious. Like it got like it was like I think at the time it was $250 a track or $500 a track or something around there, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, like you sort of legitimized it. There was paperwork involved, and it felt more official. Um, and then I remember like we were kind of talking via email, and then uh, you mentioned like coming in. I think I came in, and then we talked about. I still have the picture, by the way, that I'll share with this when it goes out. But I do remember like telling you like I was going to school for video stuff and visual effects, and so I think that's where the kind of crossover came to where it was like, all right, maybe like you could work and then work over here like with me, and then I remember Tom Casino. There's a job that came up, and it was for support, and that was kind of like, hey, there's this thing that might work for you, and then I didn't get it, and I was so bummed, and then patience prevailed because then it kind of led things fell into place, but I do remember like it felt when via email it felt like we had a very strong like just affinity, and it could just be like your retail sales side just be like, come on buddy, get in here, but it was I feel it felt like more than that, and it ended up being more than that for sure.
Um, Look, I mean, I I think that there was a genuinity to the cast of characters that were there in the beginning. And you could do a whole show on the rise and fall of the GoPro media team. And there's like that's a whole season, I think. But there was some really genuinely wonderful, creative, artistic, kind-hearted souls that were running around that building. And for whatever reason, Nick, the CEO at GoPro, he just saw fit to kind of like let that environment foster and let that goodness ring out from what we were creating. And I think about this all the time. We really talked about each other as a family, and even as that department grew to like over 200 people, it still kept that kind of family vibe, and everybody looking out for each other, working creatively and collaboratively with each other. It was just really special. But going back to the beginning, I think, yeah, when we first talked, I kind of knew. I was like, hey guys, this guy's our people. Like, this Matthew guy is our people. So, and I do remember trying to get you that job, and I think Tom Casino, who records his Broke for free, shout out Tom. He got the customer service job, and just languished there for years. Like, I don't know that he enjoyed that. And then, yeah, your time came around, and I remember kind of trying to sell you into Brad and Jordan and Mario and those guys and saying, look, man, this guy, if he can edit and create film half as good as he produces music, like, we'll be happy. So, yeah, and then you came in, and then all of a sudden you were there. And it was awesome for me because I now also had like an in-house composer that I could just, exploit and manipulate How?
Well,
Alrighty.
it like kind of blows my mind that that was a because I look at that now like working at a company and also like having kind of a couple hands in a couple different pots internally feels a little strange, but it worked really well because like and it was like there was multiple musicians working for GoPro that kind of fed the beast, if you
Yeah,
will.
it was. I say this to people all the time because looking outside in at GoPro, like it's kind of this Icarus story, right? Like we just, we were overcome with our own success so fast, and we just flew so close to the sun that there was kind of an inevitable fall that had to happen. And it's
Mm.
definitely a beautiful part of a really beautiful story. And I have nothing but love for that company. I think they're still doing well and still, they've carved out where their market is. But, um, it's just one of those things where I think that like, even as we got so big, it's like that family feeling kept there, but also, yeah, there were so many multidisciplined creatives that were working there. And this is what I loved about it is rather than this is your job and that other thing that you do is your hobby, we really said like what else can you do that you're really good at and how can we pull that in creatively to the things that we're making, the videos that we're making and like the art that we're making. And like I think it just lent this like credibility, one, that soul that you could kind of feel when you watch a lot of those videos. And then two, it just like the end product was bonkers good because
Hmm.
so many talented people like wearing all those hats, like you mentioned. Like, I think about Ben Schweer, who, man,
Hmm.
right? Oh, warm fuzzies. That dude's the keyboardist for Ride. He plays keys for Freddie Gibbs. And like he like came to us like fully baked talent. And I don't even remember I met him through Kelly. We went down to LA and we were I think we were at FYF Fest and like set up an interview with Ben. And same thing. It was just like we met him and 5 minutes in, I was like, this guy's our people. Like we gotta bring him in. And yeah, he moved up to the
Oh,
Bay and yeah.
sweet Canadian bacon. um, well, I want to kind of go back a second, like a few years, to when you were brought on from being kind of a what capacity were you a music supervisor before GoPro? Like what how where were your how green were you or how non-green were you at that time?
I was super green, and what was happening was, so I grew up playing music. I've been a musician pretty much my whole life. I went to camp. I turned 12 while I was at camp, and I heard Nirvana for the first time. So like something about that, like I'm going into junior high and hearing Nirvana, and a camp counselor there had a guitar and he was playing the riff from Smells Like Teen Spirit. And my mom is a really accomplished musician. She plays pretty much any, if it has strings, that she can play it. And my whole time growing up, I was kind of like, I don't care about music. I don't care about playing music. Some of my mom does. And when I came back from that, I was like, oh, I know what I want to do. And I went to my mom and I was like, hey, will you teach me how to play the guitar? And she said, no. I don't think you're disciplined enough to stick with it. I don't like, and
Ooh.
yeah, it was like the first real, I was so surprised. I was shocked. My mother is a sweetheart teddy bear. Like she's never said a mean thing in her life. And so when she said that to me, I was like, man, that was harsh. Well, I'm going to show her. I'll show her. And lo and behold, like I come to find out later, she was totally reverse psychologing me, which I don't know if that's good parenting now or not, but yeah, she accidentally left a Beatles songbook with chord, like finger chord progressions and stuff like in the book. And I loved the Beatles at the time, so I was like, "Look, Mom, I can play Eleanor Rigby. Look, Mom, I can play Help."
Hmm.
So I grew up playing music, and when I was 17, I was in a band called Blazar, which terrible name for a band, but what can you tell a 17-year-old? We were a weird like kind of shoegazy alternative band, and we went on this little summer tour for like 3 weeks, and went all the way to St. Louis and back, and just all kinds of chaos. Both our vans broke down, and had to hitch a ride back on a bus with some youth group, but Um,
Whoa. With the
yeah.
youth group.
And then I started playing music. I started that job in retail, doing the skateboard and snowboard retailer, and that took me all over Colorado. And then I landed in Fort Collins, and that's when I was in a band called Augustine. We were a hardcore band. And then we went on, I did a tour with them. That was like about a 6-week tour. And at this point, I think I'm about like 25, 26 years old. I went through like a terrible, terrible, heart-wrenching breakup. And I landed in Long Beach, California, as I said. And that's, I thought, I'm doing this retail job, and that's fine and well and good, but like I really, really want to do something with my music. And I know I don't want to be in a band or tour anymore. Like I think I had fun doing that. That ship had sailed though. And so that got me into composing. And at the time, I knew Brad Schmidt. He was going to UCLA and getting his master's in film. And then I had a few other friends that went to not Full Sail. I can't remember the name of the school in Orange County, but there's like a film intense school.
Yeah, Cal Arts.
I
That it?
did work
Or
with some kids from Cal Arts, but that was after this. It will come back to me. Sorry, listeners. But there were enough people that I knew that were doing film programs in school that I just hit them all up and said, "Hey, just so you know, I'm getting into composing. I had recently found a cello through some ill-gotten means." Um, and I just started offering up like, hey, I can't do much, but I can do short films. And so the composing naturally led to people going like, hey, your score is cool, but we want to get this song into our movie or into our film or into our ad. And I went, okay, I guess I'll try to figure that out. And I like legitimately, Matthew, I looked online about what music licensing was. I watched maybe a YouTube video about it and kind of faked my way through my first license, which I can't even remember what it was for. But I got both sides of the license back. Luckily enough, both sides repped 100% of the master and publishing. And like I lucked out on my first one, and then I just kind of took it from there. So Brad got back in touch with me when he was at GoPro and said, hey, I know you're doing music supervision stuff and music licensing stuff. Would you be interested in doing some freelance work for us? So I would send them suggestions from time to time and kind of help them out on the licensing end. I now know that they were not using any of my expertise and only trading cameras on emails to musicians. So. But I was very, very, very green, but just knew that I loved music and I wanted to be, if I wasn't going to be playing music professionally, I wanted to be as close or kind of adjacent to that as possible. And the only thing I love more than playing music is sharing music with people and like hearing something that like, gives me the goosebumps or, just gives me the chills and being like, I have to share this with people. Like they have to feel as amazing as this made me feel.
in the entire ecosystem of music, I feel like that is a very important continent in the world of music. Like because the people that really love it from the deepest core and the deepest crevices of their being to share that and not gatekeep that, because I think that that allows for the music to flow and spread throughout, because I know like a lot early on when I listened to music, I would kind of hold on to things and like feel like a sense of ownership towards it, but like that's a very important piece of the music pie for those who like have an affinity to it, but also express it via sharing it with their neighbor. That's a beautiful thing that I did not know about you. Like that.
Well, and full circle, when the first time I heard like my first batch of Insightful tracks, I'm going through the GoPro like server, and they're like, all the music's in there. The first time I heard your music, I was like, damn, I gotta share this. Like it was I don't know, man. You just hit me at the right place in the right time, and I was like, this is something special. And like, I'd already been listening to kind of everything else I'd been using, and it was they had some really cool stuff in there. Early Tender Loving Empire bands, that label out of Portland. And the owner of that label is a friend of mine, and Brad's from Pagosa. And he went on to do big things. So they've been working with them, and they've been working with, like, I think Tom at that point, Broke for Free, was in there. Overwork, is a big, like, kind of club producer. They've been working with him. But your stuff just really, really, really resonated. And I was like, again, it just gave me that feeling like I've got to share this. And like, that was what was so amazing about the GoPro gig was, we'd all find these great songs and then be able to put them on a video that would, go get 1 million views and share. And we would, I remember you and I would always geek out, with the music team about, like, people in the comments being like, what is the song? And where can I find this song? So yeah, it was really special, man.
It makes a lot of sense that's an element of your character too, as a music supervisor, like to come across music that's like, oh shit, I this needs to go on something, like, yeah, that kind of says a lot, like, and not speaking for me, but just in music supervision, like, if you came in general, like, if you came across an artist that's like, that might not be that's emerging, or is like not emerged at all, is kind of actually under the radar, to find something like that must be like an exciting thing for a music supervisor, like one of the most, I'm assuming.
I have had this feeling specifically placing your music. This is going to sound like an insightful paid promo. I've had that feeling placing your music multiple times because the scale of what I've kind of been doing has grown, like, bigger and bigger over time. And I don't know how, man. I've banana peel slipped my way into most of this stuff. I smiled and winked my way through the door, I think. But look, like, just recently, like, seeing Last Time go up on the soundtrack, on the NBA 2K22 soundtrack, and seeing your name on, like, the promo and stuff, and, like, going through, I had people sending me comments from, either Reddit or Twitter where they're talking about the soundtrack, and last time just kept coming up. And I kept hearing from the community, like, man, they really are putting us on to, like, some things, some new things. So I get that feeling a lot, and it's pride, but, like, at the same time, it's like, that's your talent and your ability and your charisma that got you there. I'm just the broker. But yeah, it's crazy to watch music get placed against picture and know that you, like, had a little finger or a hand in that.
Yeah, a little finger. It changed my life, man. It really, like, I think there's certain milestones in the music that I've created and different things that I've done and achieved, but this was one that kind of, Last Time in this game really changed a lot, because it felt like in parallel with GoPro, like, there was a time where the music was being placed in GoPro stuff at the right time, it felt like. And I would see that on the back end of like Bandcamp, or I would see it on the back end of SoundCloud. And, like, this was like a humongous kind of needle moving thing for my career. So I can't thank you enough. Like, I think about it all the time, and how thankful I am. And it really, like, for other artists too, I think, like, for all of the artists that are included on these types of more well thought out and more curated types of things, like, it really can make a huge dent in their overall reach to people, and like, globally. So this I can't even, yeah, I can't thank you enough. It was like a huge honor. I did want to kind of, like, because I wanted to go kind of how you kind of shaped the GoPro music supervision space, like how you built that, like what were the challenges of building the GoPro space, knowing that there was like a bunch of, knuckleheads running around and things were unorganized, and like how did you kind of tackle that? And I know you mentioned Bend, and that was kind of a little later when you started growing, but initially when you got in there, you knew you were working for them full time. This was your gig. How did you kind of tackle that, and what were kind of the challenges in that building?
Well, I think you just brought up like a really salient point, which was we kind of all saw through the videos, through just the short films and the short videos we were doing, that there's a really big opportunity here. There's a big audience, and there's a big opportunity here to really kind of like place independent and unheard and like kind of regionally closed off music in these videos, and then they're going all over the world. And like, for for better or for worse, I think most brands, big brands, try to default to, well, what's the algorithm telling us about what the most popular song for this demographic in this regional territory is? Let's get that song, and then find the next 3 on that data list, and we'll get those songs. And like, I think that that's all well and good and fine if you're doing that, but like, there's no soul. There's no soul to it. And Brad used to drive us crazy with this, where we'd be like, this isn't an amazing spot. The song is great, the video is great, the cut's great, the edit's great. Let's show it to Brad. We're gonna ship this thing tomorrow. And he'd go, I don't know if the music's really speaking to me. And so
I remember it distinctly, like with his legs, with his like big lanky legs crossed over with his sandals on. He'd have sandals on in the office. Yeah. And he'd have his hand like this.
I don't know. Yeah. But I think his instincts as a creator and a creative and as a storyteller are super, super strong. But there was a point where I think he and I had a discussion. He's like, hey, man, like, we trust you. We trust, kind of your process and the way you want to do this, and, build this music program into something. So the real honest to God truth is that we couldn't afford syncs and placements and licenses from big artists. So instead what we did was, hey, why don't we, reach out to artists that we love that are independent, and artists that we listen to that maybe don't have like a huge reach necessarily, but that are really doing something special. The same way we are, we're just a bunch of kind of green kids in an edit bay throwing videos together from a shaky action camp, So I think, again, it was kind of like reaching out to who we thought was our people and using music as kind of the benchmark there. But yeah, and then it was, the challenge was, we used to put out, I think, 1 video every 2 weeks, right? And that in and of itself, kind of, getting a license to use that music, figuring out if it's the right music, cutting against it. Okay, we got to get this up. Let's get those licenses in place. Let's make sure we got the, everything's official. We then went to 1 video a week. And that was really challenging. Then it was 2 videos a week, and then it was 3 videos a week. And I think at about that point, I had suggested, I said, well, hey, why don't we just like build our own licensing library? Like, we're doing these licenses with people. The fees are about the same. They're all commensurate with every other use. And why don't we start talking to the artists that we love, some of whom work in this very building, and see if we can put together like a library where, you can add tracks, you can remove tracks, you can, if you license a song exclusively, just let us know. We'll pull it out of the library. If you have new music you want us to hear, send it on over. We'll do an amendment to add it in, and we'll put a fixed fee on it, and it had 1 fee for like online, and then another if we did TV, and then another if we were doing like cinema or Jumbotron. And basically the gig was, the editors were then able to go through this library at will and kind of pick and pull music and temp against a lot of things. Because at the end of the day, if we locked something to picture, we'd just reach out to the artist and go, hey, we got a placement, send us an invoice. We'll get, that out to you super quick. and send us some new music when you've got some time. And um, so it was really kind of like the scaling to volume that was really challenging. I don't think it was very challenging finding artists and publishers and labels who were willing to kind of join us on that journey, because this was 2010, 2011. This was, it's weird to think about, but this was really almost kind of like the pre super hardcore digital times. You know, the way that we're connected now is not the way that we were connected. And music for digital content at the time, TV was the big spend, cinema was a big spend. And then if you said, oh yeah, and we want to add internet, they go, oh, well, yeah, $250, whatever. And, you know, perpetual's fine, because if it's on the internet, it's going to live there forever anyways. So yeah, no big deal. And, you know, fortunately for us, and like, you know, this was not done maliciously at all, or to exploit artists at all, but like, we secured all these deals for internet, you know, because that was our main portal, you know, the GoPro YouTube channels and social channels. And it just worked out that we were able to put so much really great undiscovered music that was, again, like the heartbeat of these people that were working there on these videos. And the music, I think it, I have to vet this. So you need to get your fact checker and your producer on this. But I think at one point we had something like 250,000 songs and like over 600 artists in the library, and had gotten it so big that we actually, like, you know, moved over to Source Audio software to coordinate and aggregate and, you know, everything.
Was it all file organization? Like, was it all in like artist name folders and?
You clicked on the music folder, and then you clicked on the genre folder, which I don't even know how we would do that now. And then you would click on the artist folder, and then I think we had it divided up by albums even, or releases, or like singles, but you just had to go into that server and dig. And like, that was kind
Brainchild, right?
Yes,
I remember
Brainchild. That was the name of the server. And that was kind of by design. I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but it was by design, because I wanted editors to be really frustrated looking for music themselves and come to me and say, hey, dude, I'm doing this crazy snowboard video where Travis Rice is doing, you know, the first ever quadruple backflip, big twist, whatever. And I just can't find a song for it, and I'm sick of digging through Brainchild. And I go, oh, here, I got some heat for you. So yeah, I mean, that's really kind of how I like established the music supervision role there. And then, yeah, I think it was just one of those things that GoPro struck a chord with a lot of people for a lot of reasons, but it was mostly that we're democratizing the creative process. And you may not be a filmmaker, you may not have gone to film school, but this camera puts that kind of power in your hands. So it was the same thing with the music. It was like, you know, you may not be a major label signed to a big publishing deal, but like, let's democratize this thing. And people just really latched onto it. And I think the cool factor of GoPro was enough that a lot of like really cool and well-established labels like Ninja Tune and Warp Records and Low Profile, who's a publisher in New York, Terrorbird, like they all were just like, yeah, this is kind of cool, and our artists kind of see the opportunity in it. And last thing about this, the funniest thing was our fees were kind of, you know, again, we didn't have a lot of money to work with, so our fees were kind of low. So we would get like the B-sides and like kind of the bottom of the barrel. Like artists were like, I don't want to put like my hit record in the GoPro music library. I want to, but you can give them these 6 songs. But I think that even led to us like finding crazy more gems that people would never discover in music that like the artist didn't even think had a runway. But then, you know, it would go on a video and get 10 million views, and people are like, who's this artist? So, yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, wow. That's really cool. That's really cool. Just even the mentioning of Brainchild just brings back a lot of memories there. Damn, so you guys went very manual. It was very manual at first. You guys upgraded to Source Audio, which is a or a software where you can organize music, meta tag it, do all the metadata. It's a subscription, if I recall.
Mm-hmm.
And that ingestion and that metadata organization probably took a shitload of time, I'm assuming.
It was, well, I love that you're asking this because you'll smile when I tell you who was responsible for all that. Um, we knew that as the library was getting bigger and bigger, like we weren't going to turn off ingestion of music because there was just so much good music coming through the door. But it got to a point where, yeah, even I was sick of looking through Brainchild for music, and I couldn't keep up. So yeah, we licensed Source Audio, and we knew that we needed to hire like a coordinator or somebody that could like really dive in and had a brain for that. And this guy named Nick Johnson came through the door. Nick. Who is doing like huge big things for Spotify now. He's like an audio engineer at Spotify, and also I think leads some of their podcasting stuff on the audio side. And he's just a joy to know too. He and his wife Haley are
Lovely
incredible.
man.
So
Lovely
lovely.
man.
So lovely. And like one of the most adventurous people I've ever met. You wouldn't assume it when you first meet him, but like he would
Not
tell
at
me
all.
things like, yeah, I get on my bike, my motorcycle at 4 a.m, and I ride out to the Grand Canyon and I take a look at it, and then I ride all the way back to LA. Like, yeah, he's an amazing person. But he was the one who came in and really just dove into that project with both feet. And again, it was just like, this is our people. I know that this guy needs to be a part of this team, and like, he was an audio engineer, but was applying for this music role job. And, at that point, he's like, I know you guys aren't hiring audio engineers, so it's fine. But, if that ever came to be an opportunity. And sure
Which
enough.
it did. Yeah.
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 Not a year later, he was in his studio at GoPro.
Right. Yeah. And let's maybe fast forward to the entertainment division, because that was like the peak of the scaling of GoPro's content.
Yeah.
Right before the Red Wedding, if you will, the first of many there. But there was, like you said earlier, like 200-ish heads in the entertainment division, which including myself. I was there at the time, in like the more UGC space. But there was different verticals, so there's like probably 5-6 people per vertical, so like 5 editors, producers for surf and outdoor stuff, and for snow, and for this and for that. So the amount of content at the time was insane. Like this was GoPro went public, so there was a lot of kind of pressure on us to kind of build content out, and we hired these amazing. In hindsight, like, I think it was a lot of young people working there, very young people, like early 20s, sometimes in the late teens.
Mm-hmm.
But we were just hired to just pump out, go shoot stuff, edit it, turn it around. We're looking at episodical content, which we kind of did for a little bit, which was new to the whole company. From your point of view, how was that adjustment in terms of music licensing, and what were the challenges there?
So, we had really established the GoPro Music program as a force to be reckoned with, right? We had an artist residency program where we'd send cameras to artists that were in residence or at studio, and would do develop content around that. The music library was huge. We had really like great artists, great music in that library. And really the way we started to feel like the entertainment division scale. And this is the sad truth about every company that starts the way that GoPro did, with a wing and a prayer, and gets so ultra successful so fast that like the next logical step is to take that company public, and in order to take a company public, you have to demonstrate numerous revenue streams and make all the promises in the world that like all these revenue streams are viable, and we've got the talent and the wherewithal and the resources to do it. And before I say this, I need to qualify it with I love that company from the top to bottom, like from Nick, the CEO, who I've been privileged enough to spend a little time with, and We're good friends. We've had some times, outside of GoPro, were really special. And then, with Brad, who's the senior creative director at GoPro, and then guys like Paul Crandall and Neil Dana, and Ruben, and like all these guys that kind of, these are all Nick's friends that he went to school with or knew from surfing, and he brought them into the company. So when the entertainment division and going public kind of all happened simultaneously, that real family feeling was really kind of put to the test and put through the ringer, because now it's not about what we're creating and the vibe and the feelings and is this spiritually right for the brand, and is the soul of the brand intact. It became about revenue, and revenue is usually about, the first time I ever heard the phrase content is king, which people are still just kind of catching on to now in 2022, was, I think, out of the mouth of the guy who was going to sell all the entertainment. He was going to sell all of our content. He said, content is king. And because of that, we need to, make as much content as possible and push it out the door. And I would be in meetings with the guy who was pitching all this stuff. And I'm not going to name names here because I don't want to disparage anybody. But you could really get the sense that this big LA business executive, this media business executive, had come in and just was kind of doing like, the hands rubbing together, like, oh, I'm going to sell this for $1 million. And I think, there were some questionable decisions that were made about how we were going to share our content with the world. And so behind that, the content is king. We got to open up the pipeline and really start pumping out content. And, I know you and I and Brad and all these people were having discussions about, it takes time to make these things special and feel the way they do. And it takes time to make our content what it is. And you can't just throw, 10 people in a room and expect them all to be Brad Schmidt. And you can't just, you can't create 10 Steven Spielbergs. Even if you give them all the same, environment and resources, that's just not how it works. And I don't think that ever really got communicated back, right? So we saw all of this happening. We saw the writing on the wall. And I at one point, I think I marched into like Will Tidman's office or somebody's office. I was like, hey, man, like, I see what's happening here. And I can see that, like, pumping out content, we're going to water down our content. And I just want to let you know that is not going to happen with the music on this brand. Like, we're not moving to production catalog libraries. Like, we're not moving to easy answer. We're going to keep doing what we're doing here. And he said, I absolutely 100% expect you to do that, because I think that's the only way we kind of salvage what's going on. And here's the thing. I think the content that got made out of that entertainment division, when we brought on all those like big producers, this, Bill McCullough and, Josh, I can't remember Josh's last name, but just amazing.
Lennox, yeah.
Josh Lennox, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just really amazing producers. But they were from the big entertainment world, and had that mentality. And like, I think they were great at what they did. And I think that some of the episodic content that we did behind their guidance is really cool and special. And it was something that I don't know that we had the ability to do before the entertainment division came on. So, but that said, yeah, eventually, people kind of I think the content thing was oversaturated. I think people kind of got tired of GoPro videos. Like, there's 12 million a week now. And, I think, not to Monday morning quarterback from 7 years ago, but I think it would have been better served for us to really like start focusing on features or like long form content, or maybe that episodic content, but selling that to Netflix and selling that to Amazon and selling that to the streaming platforms. Because part of what the entertainment division was we were going to become a platform of our own. And we had the idea that millions of people are just going to want to watch GoPro videos all day. And then they're going to want to buy a GoPro and then go make GoPro videos all day. And that's all well and good, but, you have these, heavily trained editors and filmmakers and directors that are making those. And like the everyday guy can't make, that magic with that camera. So it's a beautiful, it's way more complex and nuanced than that, but it's a beautiful, kind of chapter in that story, but that was definitely the beginning of the end, at least for me and for us at the entertainment division and the media team.
Right, right. Yeah, I think you're right too. I think before kind of the more senior executive people came in, um, we were we were way too like free spirited to have any type of long form organization, episodic storytelling. It was way more about like really beautiful moments, all kind of like quick bangers
Yeah.
essentially of video. Which did very well I think at the time, and that's what kind of got us that like kind of youthful spirit and like that kind of punk rock skater vibe to the videos. But yeah, we definitely, I think another thing I think of often too is like we didn't we had to use GoPros 100% of the time, and that kind of does limit the scope of content you can create because I think it was like barely around the time of I mean you could shoot kind of in a more flat image versus like a fisheye or like wide angle, but that stuff you no one watches a Netflix show in fisheye. It's like fucking weird.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird. But if they mixed it in, like if there was some give, or maybe the camera was created to shoot, yeah, we're quarterbacking here, but yeah, I think that could have helped in some capacity. The other funny thing, I kind of tell people this story all the time because I think it's hilarious, and it's hilarious because as a country, the current climate we're in too. But there was a time when GoPro was making the drone, the Karma, um, and we were like, yeah, we're gonna change the fucking game. And I remember going to the bathroom, and there's a DJI sticker in the urinal. All right, and so we were that confident about changing the game, and things didn't happen that way. It was like, that was one of the first downfalls of the empire. But I remember in that same bathroom, after peeing on the DJI logo, there's this one executive guy, I think it was Xander Lurie, who was like Survey Monkeys,
He's their
who I love.
CEO
I think
now.
yeah, he's our CEO. He was like one of, I think he was one of my favorite leaders that we had there for some reason. I
Yeah.
just really liked that guy.
Yeah.
And I remember shaking his hand in the bathroom, like I was trying to be so professional. I shook it so hard that it cracked his hand, and this was the first time I met him too. Right after taking a piss, And from then on, I never talked to him again. And like he was there for like 2 years, and we like sat right down the hallway. But it was a tough time, man. Tough time. Very tough time.
Yeah, I like Xander a lot, and I think he is a very unique, singular, talented individual that, he's a CEO, and that's just like a different class of person. But I don't think I'd ever met one that was like kind of as warm and kind of like, he was like a real person, and I never got kind of like a big time vibe from him. But I also think he and a lot of other those like kind of senior executives that came into GoPro, they went to building A, which was, that's where Nick and all the execs sat, and it's quiet and it's clean, it's beautiful. That's probably where they had their interview. That's probably where they had the second interview. That's where they have the board meetings. And then he showed up first day at building D, which was where the media team was, and it's like just
BO and socks and like fucking no shoes
hanging off of computers. Hoverboards and skateboards like zooming up and down the hallway, and people watching soccer at all hours, like screaming at the TV, and
no one's working.
No one's working. And like that was the environment that we've, and I think for better or for worse, that kind of like you said, that vibe. I don't, we were not a disciplined media team at that point. We were a free form content, art forward, vibey team. So when it came to making these bangers, like you said, like, yeah, we excel there, but like, you guys want to do episodic content? Like, there was no way that was going to happen. And I think when a lot of those executives came in and saw all of us and went, wait, this is the team behind all these, you know?
Like, there's no fucking way. Yeah, Xander was
Yeah.
like, I need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna
that,
go survey
that kid hurt my hand. Yeah. My
Well,
fucking hand is broken.
To be fair, you have one of the firmest handshakes I've ever encountered, but that is how I knew. Like when you came in and shook my hand for the first time, I was like, yeah. That kid is self-assured and self-aware, and I like that guy a lot. So
Thanks, man. That's the first time I ever got complimented on that, so I really appreciate that. I do need to ease up sometimes when, especially if I had a couple drinks and I do that. I think it could be like a sign of warfare too for another male. But no, that's good. And I do want to say too, like with when it came to the music, like GoPro was doing really cool shit, especially like there was a Weekend music video that we were a part of.
Mm-hmm.
We're in there with like renowned music video directors and like OG music people. So like we had a foothold there. It was just a little difficult to like translate music content through a GoPro lens. I think that was kind of a challenge. Oh, the what was it? The Grateful Dead stuff. Do you remember that? Was it Grateful Dead or was it?
No, we did something with Grateful Dead, and the way that we would kind of sell into musicians was like, you can mount this camera anywhere on your instrument, and I think that's a really cool perspective, but it's a very limited perspective, and like you said, you know, if you're only able to use a GoPro camera, you know, and you're in fisheye and you're looking down the neck of a guitar, like you can only see that shot so many times and be like, wow, that's really cool. But that said, like as the camera evolved, it really got us in access to some people, musicians, places that were mind blowing. And you know, for all the shit we're talking right now about, you know, how what happened and how the business was run, like I think there were like culture altering things that were happening around that camera. And you know, one of them, like, I can't remember the song, but Beyonce filmed an entire video in her apartment or in an apartment with some backup dancers and a GoPro.
That's right. Oh, what was that song called? I don't know the name of it.
Something about tennis, I think, but I can't remember.
Okay. Yeah.
All the Bayhive in Texas right now is coming after me. They're like, no, it's but like Foles, you know, Foles, who's this like seminal British rock band. They did the first GoPro 360 video, you know, when we had the spherical cams. And that video was incredible. It's amazing. And I can't remember the name of the director that did it. But you know, he was a big, he's a single one name guy. Your fact checker and producer is going to have to do so much cleanup for me.
I feel like it's with the N. No, I know exactly.
You're right.
I know exactly who it is. Yeah.
All his fans
or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, you're right there. Yeah. But he had done videos for The Weeknd, and a bunch of other artists, and then The Weeknd and Nabil. That's right.
That's it.
His
Nabil.
name.
Yeah.
Nabil.
That's it.
So glad I remember.
Got it.
He did an Apple Music video with The Weeknd where they used GoPros, and then The Weeknd himself he allowed GoPro to come into like behind the scenes. Like in the Jose Gabriel Nogues, who's also such a dear friend.
Lovely man.
He is really something special.
Kind of creepy how artsy he is, you know? In the best way. I mean that in the most loving way. He would know.
He does, I think, all the media and direction, kind of content direction for the Hammer Museum now. I can't remember. I think it's Hammer Museum in LA. Yeah. So he is probably the most art forward individual I know, but for what and people just love him. He's such a sweet, humble.
He's really intentional, like very intentional with what he does. Yeah.
Yeah. And
special.
I took this for granted because I didn't really understand how special this was at the time or how unique it was. But like Abel, The Weeknd, let Gabriel in the room that he was warming up in right before his show, where it was just him and a guitar player and Gabriel with the camera. And like, you know, not even the manager's in that room, you know, not even like, nobody else is in that room. And So because that camera was so, it wasn't invasive, it was a small little thing. And like, again, I think people just really gravitated towards kind of the cool factor of what GoPro was. Like, it got us access to artists and talent that it still blows my mind because of that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That was a very special time, and I hope it doesn't come across like there was shit talking. I think it's just it's just two boys shooting the shit. But it was a very special time, and it was a very like for us, everyone involved in that time. I think everyone kind of feels a similar affinity to that time period. It was kind of like something that rarely will happen, ever again. Um,
That is
yeah.
100% how I always talk about it. I say that was an alchemical moment where all the right pieces and all the right people and all the right circumstances were just aligned perfectly. And I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again. Like, it was just a special moment. It was before the rise of the influencer and content, which I think GoPro had a lot to do with. And again, it was just this, we started as, like, when I showed up there in Half Moon Bay, we were 92 people, and we were just kind of the little camera that could. And then 3-4 years later, we were a globally recognized name, like Kleenex. We were showing up in rap songs. I remember there's like I think it's an Isaiah Rashad or maybe it's a School IQ song where they're talking about the GoPro, and I sent it over to the team. I was like, they're talking about GoPro in their music. Like, this is insane. And yeah, I think it's, every story, you have to really contextualize the good and the bad. And like, I think a lot of that stuff that was happening, a lot of the good stuff that happened was reactionary to the bad stuff, and kind of like, how can we still claim our soul and keep our soul? And how can we, or it was just even like all of a sudden we have these big episodic content budgets, and, we're filming with Real Madrid, with Cristiano Ronaldo, juggling with Demit and the boys. And so, like, again, I think there were amazing things happening. I just don't think that will ever happen again in that way. I think if anybody in this day and age walked into a room full of us, they would just go, nah, shut
They
it all
turn
down.
around.
Yeah, shut it all down.
Shut it off.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, well put, well said. All right, let's fast forward a little bit. So, you you ended up leaving GoPro,
Yes.
um, and kind of tell us the journey from GoPro to 2K games.
Sure. Sure. Um, I ended up being a GoPro about 6 years. I was there from 2010 to early 2017. So right around over 6 years. And I had been through at that point 3 or 4 rounds of layoffs. And the bond that I had with so many people there was so strong. And like, again, we just had this family environment that, I remember that first day, that first round of layoffs, like after they got announced. And I think we all went to, some bar, and I saw video footage of this the other day. And there's like, gosh, probably 100 people in this tiny little bar in San Mateo. And every time somebody would walk through the door, to show up for the party, raucous cheers broke out. They're like, yeah, like just celebrating this person. And after going through layoffs like that with a company that is your family, and watching like some of like the people that were leaders and like that developed my career and helped me get cut from the team, I just kind of saw the writing on the wall. And then the guy who was leading the media team at the time, who admittedly I was kind of not a real big fan of, he said, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And I thought, "Oh, here we go. This is it." And he pulled me into a side room and he said, "Hey, there's another round of layoffs coming. But I want you to know, Nick and I both agree that you should stay on and do music here. What do you think? Do you think there's still magic left in the tank here?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. I think, this has been a magical little company and a magical little product, forever. And I think if it's done right, there's still, a lot of potential here." Um, and then he said, okay, well, that's all well and good, but I just want to let you know that we're going to have to cut your last remaining team member, on the music team, who was Ben Schweer. And I need to be sensitive about telling this story because obviously there's a lot of personal stuff about Ben, but I do want to share this story. Because at that point, Ben and I were both expecting our first children, and they were due 3 weeks apart from each other. And so he and I are both expecting children. Ben's wife had just left kind of her longtime career to go explore and start a new one. And at that same time, they had, I think, like the last remaining family member that was in the States for them had passed away. I think it was his wife's mom. So they were just like kind of going through it, right? And Ben and I at that time both lived in Half Moon Bay. And yes, I think Danielle and I were sharing a car still at that point. So there'd be some mornings I have Ben come pick me up and we drive to work together, and it was great. And I really remember this very clearly. There was one morning where we were driving to work, and I'd had that conversation with the guy who was running the media team. And I told Ben, I said, so, hey, listen, there's one spot on the music team left for like a music supervisor. And I am pretty sure I want you to take that position, and I think I'm going to part ways with GoPro. Oh man, I didn't expect to get choked up about this. And just saying that like out loud, really like it hit home. I was like, I've developed such an amazing career here, and I've like been allowed to do so many amazing things, and I've been privileged enough to like, get to do like almost exactly what I love to do the most, at this place. And to say that to, I think I need to be the one to go was like, it just like we had a moment in the car, it was just quiet. And he went, no, man, you can't do that. Like that's, you got to stay. And I just knew I was like, it's scary to think this, and it's scary to like really confront this, but I think it's time for me to go. And it was because like, at that point, I think everybody from the original team had left or had gone or had been cut. So I just knew in my heart that was the right thing to do. My wife was gainfully employed at the time. We were kind of in better state. And again, I had a daughter on the way, not, 6 weeks after this was happening. Like her due date was early mid-May, and this all happened in March. And so I just, I went, and Ben is incredible. Like he is twice the music supervisor and probably twice the man I am. But I just knew like it would be in better hands, and the way that it was going, like Ben was really the guy to stay there, and I was the guy that needed to move on. And it was a tough decision, but I went ahead and let the team know. I said, you know what? You gave me a gun with one bullet, and here's how we're going to use it. So I left GoPro I think end of March. I had 4 weeks of kind of like, this is amazing and this is totally terrifying, and I got a baby on the way. And on May 4th, not 6 weeks after this had all happened, this conversations, my wife, Danielle, came into our room, and she looked very forlorn. And, I asked, what's wrong? What's going on? She said, I don't know. There's just something's not right with the baby. And, well, tell me about that. What do you think? They're just not moving. The baby's not moving. And, I was, of course, trying to be the voice of calm reason. And, well, the doctor told us that in the late stages of pregnancy, the baby kind of settles into the birth canal, and that inhibits their movement. That's probably all it is. And she said, no, it's not like that. Something's wrong, and I think we need to go to the hospital. So we went to the hospital, and the whole way there, I'm kind of grumbling and grousing, like, oh man, like, I had another week until this baby was born, and we're going to the hospital, but like, I'm sure, everything's fine. It'll be cool. And we get there, and they hook her up to the ultrasound, and the doctor flashes me a look that's basically like, I'm about to tell your wife something very serious and scary, but I'm going to pad it for her. But this look I'm giving you now, we're in critical stages. And the doctor, she looks at my wife and she says, "Hey, so we're going to go ahead and schedule a C-section. You know, and uh, you know, I just want you to be ready for that." And my sweet, what you know, Danielle, she's so sweet and pure. She looks at the doctor and goes, "Oh, okay. So for like tomorrow or the next day, or?" And the doctor looked at her and goes, "No, right now. We're gonna schedule the C-section for right now." And she says, "Dad, I need you to go get scrubbed up and ready for surgery, the C-section. We're gonna meet your baby." Um, so they wheel Danielle away. I go get scrubbed up. And funny little story. We hadn't found out the gender of the baby yet. You know, we didn't know. We were gonna keep it a surprise. And the doctor is talking to Danielle. You know, Danielle's all kind of in happy land. She doesn't really kind of grasp what's going on quite yet. And the doctor goes, "So have you chosen a name for the baby?" And my wife says, "Yeah, we're gonna name him Holden." You know, and she said, "Him, huh? Holden, okay. And what if it's a girl?" And Danielle goes, "Oh, it's not a girl. You know, my mom, my mother-in-law, my sweet saint of a mother, had seen our ultrasound and went, 'Oh my gosh, you're having a boy.' And we go, 'Oh, we weren't going to find out, but thanks, mom.'" So Danielle goes, "Yeah, his name's going to be Holden." And the doctor goes, "Well, what if it's a girl?" And Danielle goes, "Oh, it's not a girl. It's a boy." And the doctor kind of like gets wide-eyed and goes, "But what if it's a girl?" And 45 minutes after we got to the hospital, my daughter, Isley, was born. And when she was born, she was not crying. And it was very clear that she was having trouble breathing. And she came out so pale. I had to ask, you know, "Hey, that doesn't look like a healthy newborn baby." And they said, "Yeah, it seems like there's some respiratory issues, and it seems like there has been some blood loss. And we're not sure how that has happened because there's no additional blood necessarily like in any place that it shouldn't be. But we're not sure what's going on." And from there, that escalated very quickly into, "We need to transfer your daughter to Santa Clara," which is the big medical facility, the big Kaiser, that's just down from Stanford Children's Hospital. And things are not well for your daughter. Um, so, you know, I'm already kind of in it. You know, I've left my job of 6 years that I loved and kind of floating in this weird free space. And you know, I'm writing music and, you know, making art and watching TV and playing video games. And like, you know, all of a sudden, like it got super real for me at that moment. And because Danielle had the C-section, she was not able to travel. That's inpatient surgery, so she can't leave the hospital. So my wife literally got to see her daughter pulled out of her, set on a table, and then taken to a different room. And then she didn't see her for 3 days. I meanwhile followed the ambulance, the NICU ambulance, to Santa Clara. And we get there, and immediately Isley has to go into emergency surgery and have 2 blood transfusions. She has to have a surgery to put kind of like different leads into her body because of all the things that are happening. And again, this is all just this whirlwind. Nobody's really told me anything about what's going on yet. And finally, the surgeon is done. I went into the NICU, into the surgical room, and I said, "How close can I physically be to you and still be outside of the like containment field?" And he said, "You 6 feet away." He's like, "Sit right there." And I just sat there for, I think, an hour and a half and watched him operate on my baby girl. And so he finishes the surgery. You know, I say, "Hey, can you give me a clear picture of what we're dealing with here?" And he says, "Look, your daughter, for reasons we have no idea why right now, was leaching blood, her circulatory system, back onto her mother. Her mom was like absorbing her, you know, fetal blood, because you know the fetal blood, it passes through the placenta, I think, and you know, like they exchange blood. And for whatever reason, Isley was not reabsorbing or recirculating blood back into her body. And I said, wow, okay, so she experienced some blood loss. And he said, yeah. And the issue there is that, blood is what carries oxygen to the brain and the heart and the liver and the lungs and all the organs that need it. And he said, I hesitate to tell you this because this is going to sound kind of scary, but I need to be serious with you. He said at 70%, if you've lost 30% of your blood volume, if you have 70% of the blood volume in your body, that's when you go into shock. And if you lose 50% of your blood volume, you go into haptic shock, which you cannot recover from. You go into that kind of shock, your body's more than likely going to shut down. And I said, how much blood has she lost? He said, she's lost 70% of her blood volume. So, and he said, I don't know if your daughter is going to make it. I'm sorry to have to tell you that way, but we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that she does. And, I'm there all by myself. My wife is in a hospital bed 40 minutes up the road. This was an emergency. None of our family is there. None of our friends are there. We just went to the hospital expecting to get a check-in and a check-out, and come see us next week when you're ready for the delivery, So that all hit very heavily. And we spent 14 days in the NICU, and we had counselors come in and kind of talk to us about, what may or may not happen. We would go in to see her, and she had all these leads and tubes and hoses and breathing apparatus attached to her. And one of the things that they suggested, they said, we have this experimental therapy that we want to do on your daughter. We're going to chill her to 93 degrees. We're going to bring her body temperature down. And what that does is it arrests all the processes in the other organs in the body and just lets the brain kind of focus on healing itself. Because the lack of oxygen and the lack of blood in her body, her brain took a big hit. And there's some neurological damage that we see. And her lungs and her kidneys and her liver took a big hit. And there's detritus in her catheter line, the line that was attached to her bladder, and they said there's tissue that's in the line, and that means the tissue is dying and degrading. And they said, we don't know how this is going to all play out, but like your daughter has taken a very, very, very big hit here. And they kept using that term, like a big hit. And so Danielle joined me 3 days later. She's post-op, she's a post-delivery, dealing with all the hormones and emotions and feelings, on top of this. And we kind of just landed at the space where, we're going to hope and pray for the best, and whatever, whoever she turns out to be and whatever challenges she has, that's okay, because she's our daughter and we're going to love her. And we were, I was expecting to have a special needs child, and that was fine, my cousin had a similar thing happen. He was without oxygen for about 7 minutes, and he's special needs. And I just went, if that's the path that life has for me, like, I'm happy to take that on. And she's my daughter. I love her no matter what, and I'll always love her. And 13 or 14 days after we got to the NICU, she was discharged with a completely clean bill of health. And on the way out the door, the surgeon stopped us and he said, hey, I'm obviously a doctor. I work in a NICU. I do not use this word ever. I never use this word. Your daughter is a miracle. I need to be very honest with you that I don't know how this recovery happened. I don't know why it happened. It certainly wasn't anything I think that we really did. But she's a miracle. And that's when we knew, like, she was a super strong, she's a fighter. Oh. And you've seen Isley now. She's thriving. She's amazing. Beautiful. She's athletic. She's talented. She's smart. She's going to be 5 in May. And so I went through that.
First of all, man, I have not a lot to say about that, but just after having my daughter 2 years ago and just knowing how intense the birth process is, to go from the intense birth process to that, I'm speechless. Like, you guys did amazing. And I had I feel like you told me there's a little complication. You haven't. I didn't know all of this. Uh, so this is like hitting me fresh, and I'm blown away. And she's such a beautiful, beautiful little girl, an amazing,
She's
like, sh- in every regard, every regard. So I just have to say, man, that's what a fucking story. Oh my god,
she
what an
is
experience.
a very, very special kid, and we know that because of what she went through and how hard she clung to life to be here.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we always talk about the first moment she opened her eyes. It wasn't until about day 6 or 7, because she was on that cooling blanket, and she was basically comatose for the first week of her life. And the first moment that Danielle and I were standing there together, and we'd go visit her and just talk to her, and she opened her eyes up. And she looked right at me.
Oh,
She looked right
oh,
at me. And it was just the most, like, she knew who I was. She knew, that we were there, and you could just see, like, I'm opening my eyes because I hear my dad. And
wow.
so me and that little girl have a pretty solid bond because of the way that we kind of landed together. And for her and I were together for the first 3 days of her life, just by ourselves. So that happened. And then about 8 weeks later, my dad went and had a massive coronary event, had a heart attack. Had to go. They live in Pagosa Springs, where I'm from in Colorado, and he had been working out and was on the treadmill, and I think just started to feel some pain in his chest and his arm, and sent me a text that said, "Hey, David, I think I'm having a heart attack, but no big deal." Like, and my dad is
Colorado man.
he is Rocky Mountain hard, not to be trifled with. And just, yeah, I remember him kind of being like, yeah, it was just a light one, I'll be fine. So he got ambulanced over an hour to the big hospital in a place called Durango, and then they went, "You need a quadruple bypass surgery yesterday, and we're gonna ship you to Albuquerque." I think they sent him in the helicopter, the Flight for Life, and he went and had quadruple bypass surgery. And I flew out to Albuquerque. I my mom had, I forgot to mention that, like, in the fall, before that year, my mom had a stroke, which was really scary. And she was fine. She did okay. She made it through. She's still doing great now, no kind of residual issues. But, like, this was kind of the second time, like, one of my parents in a very short amount of time had something go wrong. And, we just had Isley not 8 weeks before that. And it was just like, looking at the sky going, like, why are you doing this to me? So I was in Albuquerque for about 4 days. I was looking after my dad. I was with my mom, spending time with her, making sure she was feeling okay. I flew back from Albuquerque to Half Moon Bay, where I was still living. And as I was on my way back, I get a text from Danielle, my wife, and it's a picture of my car that I had parked in the street next to our house. And a drunk driver, had taken a corner too fast and too hard and had completely totaled my car.
Was it the Civic?
Yeah. the
Oh,
gray,
not
the,
the Civic.
the gray
Not
Honda
the
Civic. My baby, I'd been driving that to and from GoPro for 6 years, and, like, that
Right.
was my car. And it was actually Danielle's car that, we were sharing the car, but she was like, you're working, I work from home. She's a photographer, so a lot of her work is in the evenings and on the weekends. So we were just sharing the car. And I got home from my dad's quadruple bypass and heart attack to that. And I, at that point, you're jobless. Thankfully, we had Cobra. GoPro was very generous in how they kind of lined me up with my insurance. They knew that there was a baby on the way, and also my severance package. So I will always be thankful to the people that worked that out for me there. But at this point, we're 3 or 4 months in. my savings I'm starting to tap into those, and we're paying rent. And I'm like, I really got to find something that I want to do. And at that time, there was just nothing happening musically in the Bay Area. It was, if you wanted to work in music, it's really about being in LA or New York or maybe Nashville, maybe Chicago. Maybe there's music things happening in these cities. And I just wasn't finding anything. So I was interviewing for any position that I could conceivably get. I interviewed with Facebook to be like a licensing coordinator. I talked to I think I talked to Apple, at one point about being like some very low level music functionary, but I was like, I'll take anything at this point. And then in October of that year, I had taken some time to write and record some music and finish up a project that I was really excited about, and was doing some little bit of contributions to other people's albums, and helped do the creative direction on a music video. Like, I was kind of getting out some of my dreams list, right? But it was getting a little dire, and I just, I've really got to find a job, and I don't want to leave the Bay Area. So I hop on LinkedIn, and 15 minutes before that, there was a job posting from 2K Games. And I am familiar with 2K because of the titles that they have: Borderlands and BioShock. And BioShock, I did not grow up playing video games. I was famously not allowed to play video games, and really just like kind of didn't really care all that much about them until I was back home for Christmas one year. I was over at my buddy Paul's house, him and his girlfriend Nicole, just hanging out, having some drinks. It's snowing, it's wintertime. And I go outside, and there's so much snow on the ground. I go, well, there's no way I'm digging out my car out of that and driving home. I'll just stay here. And I'm a night owl, admittedly. I keep very late hours. And Nicole and Paul were going to bed. And I go, hey man, you got any books to read? You got anything I can do? And he said, well, you should turn on the Xbox and play this game BioShock. I think you'll really like it. And I was like, okay, I'll try. I'm not really a games guy, but I'll try it. And 8 hours later, when they woke up, I was still playing this game. And I was like, I have never experienced anything like this. I didn't know video games could be this immersive or this magical or this cool. This is awesome. I haven't slept.
Yeah. Go away, Paul.
And so yeah. But I ended up being stuck at Paul and Nicole's house for 3 days because the snow was so bad. So I played my way through most of that game, really fell in love with it. The second I got back to Long Beach, where I was living at the time, I went out and got an Xbox. I bought Halo. I started playing Halo. And I was like, where has this been all my life? Just this gaming thing. This is amazing. And so BioShock and then Borderlands was a game that I started playing specifically with my brother Ian, my younger brother Ian, who's 2 years younger than I am. And we, growing up, kind of had an antagonistic relationship. We're Irish twins. Like, he's about a year and 350 days younger. We have a lot of the same friends, including Paul, who's one of his best friends. We had a lot of just the same circles that we ran in. He played music, I played music, and there was kind of always an antagonistic little brother, big brother thing. And the thing that really started to bring us close together was this game Borderlands. And so he and I would play this game, and he'd play one character class and I'd play the other. I was in San Francisco at the time. This is after I'd moved up and was working for GoPro. And he's in Colorado in Pagosa, and we're able to like talk and hang out for hours playing this game. And it just like made this relationship flourish, and it just became beautiful. And it got to the point where I was able to call him and like, hey, you want to come out and hang out with us in the Bay? Come out and hang out with us in Half Moon Bay. We went to an A's game for his birthday one year, and like it really, I don't want to say that Borderlands was like the genesis of the reparation of my relationship with my brother, but like it had a big part to do with it because it was something that we both finally loved and could do together, rather than compete at. And so when I saw this job listing come up for 2K Games, I went, oh my gosh, they do BioShock and Borderlands, and they're looking for a music manager. I gotta take this job. So I immediately send my resume. they asked for a demo reel. Do you have a demo reel of your work, as a music supervisor or whatever? And I said, I don't have a demo reel per se, but if you go to gopro.com /videos,
All the videos are
all 700. I music supervised all of them, so that's the reel if you want to see that. And I immediately got a call back. I talked to the HR person, had a wonderful conversation with her. Talked to the senior director that was hiring for the role a few days later, had a great conversation with her. Went in, interviewed with 7 different people, 2 of whom were responsible for the creation of both those games.
Wow.
So in a way, I was like, I'm glad I know what I'm talking about, but also I was so intimidated, these guys made these incredible pop culture entertainment pieces, and felt like I nailed the interview. Just walked out of there, got in the car with my wife, went, I slayed it. I'm going to get this job. And then I didn't hear from 2K for like 5 weeks.
5 weeks. Damn.
I think they were interviewing a lot of people. I think that a job like that is very highly sought after and coveted. I think there were a lot of people coming out of the woodwork for it. And I had to kind of have this like real check, like this real humility check going, I mean, I have some good experience doing this, but there are people that just have light years more experience than I do. So I kind of put it to bed, and I just, I went back to that kind of weird hole I was in about like, well, I'm not working and I've had all this crazy family drama, and like, I don't have a car, and I will just keep on keeping on. And then I was in Colorado. I went home for Christmas that year. And on December 23rd, I got an email from the HR recruiter saying, hey, we're wrapping things up here and we'd like to make you an offer for the job. Will you come to 2K? And I did circles around the living room. My family was really invested. My mom and dad, they're all standing there. And I went, they're going to offer me the job, the music manager job at 2K. And that was like the first giant big win, in a while. And so I was just over the moon about it. And so really long story, very short. That's how I got to 2K. And I got there. My first day was January 22nd. So I just celebrated my 4-year anniversary there last Friday. Thank you. I didn't even think I would make it a year, to be honest. And now I'm here and loving it. But so yeah, I got to 2K, and they had said, Half Moon Bay is a little far away. Why don't we give you a moving stipend? We'll move you up to Novato, which is where 2K headquarters is. Danielle and I found like this really special, cool, beautiful house that we were really excited to rent and get in there. And so we had been in there 2 or 3 days. I'd been at 2K for, maybe 2 weeks at that point, 2 or 3 weeks. And the movers are scheduled to come on, I think it was a Tuesday. It was February 6th. And the movers are pulling up into the driveway, and it's about 7:30 in the morning, and my phone rings, and it's my dad. And my dad never calls me that early in the morning. And so I just thought it was, mistake, butt dial, whatever, and the movers are coming, and I'll call them back in just a second. And then I get a text from my dad that says, David, I need you to call me as soon as you can. And in my head, I went, oh my gosh, my mom passed away. Like, she had the stroke, and a call this early and that kind of serious tone of a text from my dad, who doesn't really text. I was like, just gearing up to hear that my mom had passed, and, kind of already had that feeling. And so I called my dad back. He says, David, I have some bad news for you. And I went, yeah, I figured. And the next sentence out of his mouth, like, I've never had anything flip me this weird. He says, your brother passed away this morning. And I I had this moment of like, I misheard him and he said mother, or I misheard him and it's something else, but he said, your brother passed away. And I just remember saying, like, no, 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 no. That can't be right. He's, I think at the time he was 34, 34 or 35. And, um, I just, like, things were just really looking up. I got this job and I got this beautiful house and my daughter's healthy. And, there's no way like that happened, like in this whole, 6-month period of craziness. Um, and yeah, my brother had uh, woken up at 4 in the morning and had like some pretty extreme pain in his thoracic region. He had called my dad and said, Dad, I don't know what's going on, but something's wrong with my heart. And I need to take myself to the emergency room. And he was working as a chef in a restaurant, no health insurance, probably making $12 an hour. Um, uh, and wasn't going to call an ambulance, because of course that would be too expensive for him in the back end. So he drove himself to the hospital in Pagosa and checked himself in. The attending physician and the nurse got him into a bed and said, we're going to go down the hall and go get the machine that we need to go, take a look at your chest and see what's happening. And in the time they went down the hall and came back, he was gone. And he had a thoracic aneurysm in his chest. So that's like a bubbling of a vein. And it had just, the one right next to his heart, and it just tore itself open. And he bled to death internally, and he was just gone. And to have had this like really strong, awesome period of like bonding with my brother and feeling like we were really repairing our relationship and really just, I'm finally being the brother that I should be, and he's finally getting the brother that he deserves. And it's just that, we had a lot more work to do and a lot more room to go. And I was planning on that. And then he was just gone. And that in and of itself was kind of like just a hammer blow, of course, losing your sibling. And I know how close you and your brother are, Tyler, and I love Tyler. I love your brother. And so I know, if this hits home for you, that feeling. And I got the call and I was so crazy weirded out and just freaked out. I got in my car and drove to my new job. And my boss, who had hired me at the time, she was very demanding and very of a certain type, which is very present in the video game industry. And I remember walking into her office, and she immediately was kind of like upset that I was walking into her office and about to tell her something that I could tell she didn't want to hear or whatever. And I said, "Hey, I think I need to take the day off. My brother passed away this morning. I just got the call that he died." And she just went, "What are you doing here? Why are you here?" I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And I spent the next 2 hours just driving around Novato. I didn't want to go home because the movers were there. I didn't want to be at work. And I just spent the next 2 hours driving around listening to sad songs and just trying to reconcile the fact that my brother was gone.
Oh. Wow. In kind of hindsight, because this was 2017, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah, this was 2018. Yeah, February of 2018.
Wow. In hindsight, because the universe has these kind of weird, or whatever you want to call it, whatever it is, it has these weird things that it does that don't make sense at the time, but do make sense eventually. Does this make sense now to you?
It's hard to say, and because I think here's how it makes sense to me, or at least how I reconcile this in my head, and whether this is just my own kind of self-fulfilling prophecy or affirmation, or whether this is really the universe kind of working towards all things good. I don't know, but the kind of trauma and the the just, emotional hits that I took from the time, I left GoPro to the time Isley was born, my mom having the stroke, my dad having the heart attack, going through this jobless phase, not knowing if that was going to happen, getting the job, and being wildly elated for a few weeks, and then my brother passing. I think that was kind of in a way preparing me for the next 4 years at 2K. And I don't mean to trivialize my brother's life or my daughter's life or my dad's life or any of that, and compare it to that got me ready for this job. But at 2K, I was informed very early on, like, we don't have a music program per se here. We have people that do our music licensing. We have people that kind of guide the music, etc. But you're really going to kind of be building this from the ground up without a blueprint. And also, again, I had a very, very, very challenging boss. And I had a very rough time there for the first 6 months to a year I was there, because video games is just a very differently paced industry. And I know it, at this point, it's very well known in the news, things about crunch, things about, these studios coming out and talking about working 100-hour weeks and, just driving their people, basically to where they have health issues and all these things. And I will say 2K Games is not like that. 2K is not a publisher in that ilk. I think they've had some issues with that in the past, and there's a good heart and soul that run through that company. And they've really put a lot of work into remedying that. But I think that, whoever you want to blame for it, God, the universe, just life itself, it was really like kind of battle hardening me to a point where I was ready to do this. And the only reason that I say that, and the reason that I say I don't want to trivialize it with just a job, is that I think the things that we're doing at 2K now with music are really globally impactful. They're culturally impactful. And I don't know that I would have hung around and stuck it out had I not been kind of so battle hardened at that point, and kind of, almost numb and going kind of like, well, what else is there? I at least I can show up to my job and do my job, and that can kind of take away some of the, can distract me. And, over my time at 2K, I have really just flourished there, and I love being there. I love the work I do. So in that way, to answer your question, I think that's how I make sense of it. The hole that my brother left, that's still there. I don't think it's ever going to go away. But the thing that's really, really special to me, and the reason that I make that association, is that my brother and I's really the repair of our relationship started with this really silly video game and being able to play it. And when I got to 2K and he passed, it kind of felt like, one of the ways that I can kind of, I don't know, either honor or just kind of remember him is to be working here. And at that time, we were developing Borderlands 3. And so I just went, I think it'd be really neat and a testament to, like, my brother and my work and what I've done to, go along for the ride on this game. And ended up having to do some wildly insane, crazy things to put music in that game. We have Alicia Keys' Girl on Fire in the end credits, and that's a whole story in itself for another time. But and then the ad campaign was like, we used Queen, Seven Seas of Rye, and we used Etta James, At Last, like using all these big, iconic, huge songs. And like working on that game and that title really kind of brought a weird sense of closure. And again, it's a video game. It's such a silly thing. It's just, it's a piece of entertainment, but it has special resonance for me because of that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And now we're here.
That's wow, man. I'm floored. Like the amount of it's a testament to your character too, because since I've known you, you've been such a peaceful, loving, gentle, kind human being, and like if I could, I would, like, hit life and be like, life, why are you doing this to such a sweet man? But but it's really interesting. It's interesting how things unravel with certain people and their paths to where they're heading, and the amount of sometimes quote unquote like suffering there these people have to endure, um, in various aspects of their life. It did I do want to talk about 2K specifically because I think it's like the evolution from, from, if we start back from the Long Beach days and like that kind of growing the hair on the nuts to, then into GoPro and kind of building this side of things, and then becoming a father at the same time as enduring trauma, um, in various capacities. I know your hair has gotten a lot grayer over the years. I have noticed that you're gonna become Gandalf, but a sexy Gandalf, like a nice sexy Gandalf. But to see the evolution of that, like there's a lot of turbulence in that kind of letting go of like, all right, I think my time is done here. You're There's a lot of letting go and kind of a lot of trial and tribulation and loss and pain in that, to this kind of next evolution of your career. Um, and I think you can kind of parallel that to also kind of like artists in some of their careers where they go through maybe a heroin binge or like a few low points, to get to this kind of next tier of expression, um, and I think it is crazy because at the time of GoPro we were like, okay, yeah, we're reaching a lot of people, but I do feel like this place that you landed is kind of the next level of that, because it's not only, when there's a game title going out, a new title, it's not only just gonna be a YouTube video and then forgotten months later. It's like part of a child's upbringing. So the music
Yeah.
attached to that is kind of attached to a generation, and I think that's really kind of incredible, to go from, like we don't get me wrong, the GoPro thing was a huge deal, and I do think it still had built artists and did these amazing things and worked on amazing things, but this is like kind of it's like the Bible of I guess art, because it's kind of around, it's interactive. It You play it, the children will play it, or anybody will play it like day in day out, and the music element of it gets ingrained into that person. Like I remember the Sonic theme songs. Like there's nostalgia that comes from certain specifically video game soundtracks, and you're really at the forefront of curating what those are now. And like you said, you're working with the like clearing, going from clearing kind of insightful to clearing Aretha Franklin, and these names that kind of have a whole different level of complexity in terms of fees, in terms of, um, yeah, publisher, and like the mechanics of it in the on the back end. Like how has that kind of been for you? Because
You're absolutely right. It's I don't think I was really fully prepared for, or maybe even ready for, where the journey post 2K was going to take me. When I started there, it was as the manager of music licensing, and I was told like, hey, you might do a little music supervision here and there, but there's not going to be much of that. You're going to be pushing paper around a desk. And I went, you know what? Great. I'm glad for it. But really quickly, I think, the same things that were present at GoPro, kind of building this thing from the ground up, and then, being told the same thing at 2K, you're going to be building this whole thing from the ground up. The people that are there, and especially, the boss that I had at the time, who I absolutely love and adore. Now, we had a hard kind of vetting period with each other. And I just think we weren't used to each other. And, I'm I'm really friendly and gregarious and chatty, and she sees all those things as maybe like liabilities. But we had a getting to know you phase, and now I know she speaks very highly of me and loves me a lot, because of what we've done there, and we're both very proud of kind of that opportunity. But it is, man. I had a moment where we published WWE 2K. That's a game that we have in our portfolio, and I was at WWE SummerSlam, like the big SummerSlam event, and some of our senior executives were there, and one of them asked me, like, so how's it been? How what do you feel like? How's it going? And I went, I really feel like I went from the minor leagues to the big leagues, and like this is like we're at like Olympic level, like professional, league level, and I'm doing my best, and thankfully, a lot of people encouraged me along the way, and they said, "Yep, you're doing an okay job, man. You're doing good." And again, the opportunities that I had at GoPro, and those were so special and big and really wondrous at the time. I had no idea what 2K was going to do. I've gotten to sit in the room with Travis Scott and chop it up with him about what he wants to do in the game musically, and I've been on the I got to work and help kind of do some production with the game on music he was doing just recently. He's in NBA 2K22, and he's like a mentor for young up and comers, and so I got to. He doesn't have a manager, so if you work with the game, you got to work with the game, and if he doesn't like you, he's not going to return your text. But and again, I don't treat any of these people any differently than I treat you or I treat anybody else on the street. Like I really just try to bring, you're a human being, I'm a human being, and I love whatever good parts about you you've got. So again, it's just led to these really, really incredible experiences, just doing these really incredible kind of deals, or this curation that we're doing on the soundtrack, especially NBA 2K. That, again, you said it, it's really impactful. It's never lost on me that one, I have a unicorn job. I know that this is a job that a lot of people would kill for. Knock on wood. I hope not me, but and I'm very aware of the responsibility that I have, not only to the artists, but to our communities and like the kind of music that we represent. A lot of the music on NBA 2K is hip hop, it's R&B, and so really I don't want it to sound at all like it's about me. It's not, but it's about, again, sharing music from communities that the world may not be familiar with, or that may be new, or that may be unfamiliar. And just like I'll hear something and just go, man, that's really got it. Like that's it. That's hitting just
Yeah,
right.
tell me the what's the process for you, like say, so let's say 2K, let's say 2K26 comes
Mhm.
around. What's kind of the process for like how is the music being curated? Like how does that all work?
So, I am a white 40-year-old male who grew up playing in hardcore and metal bands, but who has always loved hip hop from the time I was a suburban white kid, 12-year-old, listening to Naughty by Nature, on my headphones under my blankets because my mom would have thrown that tape out. Listening to Young Black Teenagers, MC Hammer, that kind of time, and just really kind of like falling in love with music on the whole. And so the curation, it's different for every game. It's just very different. It's a different audience for each game. There's a different theme to each game. For a game like NBA 2K, there's a group of about 10 different people, all walks of life, all colors, cultures, creeds, various ages. And what we do, we're actually in the process of doing this right now for 2K23. We start in December and start to roundtable we have a Google sheet that we just go, when you hear something that resonates, when you hear something that just knocks your socks off and is different, it has to be different. It has to be future facing. It has to be kind of unlike anything we've done before. We don't want to replicate our success. We always want to challenge ourselves. When you hear that, put that on that list. And we go and go and go and go and listen and listen and listen until we get to about 200 songs. And then we start the licensing process on that body of songs right about like now. um, and we go and go and go and go. We license, we license. We hear new music along the way. And then because of the way that development works for games, we have to deliver the music for the game very early in regards to when it actually launches. So there's a challenge there in finding things that sound timeless and unique and are not so well known that people say, "Oh man, I already burnt out on this last year," or "I already heard this song all summer." And there's a challenge, a unique challenge there. But it's this group of people kind of sits around, and then as these songs kind of come back and clear, we sit around and talk about, okay, this song cleared, that song cleared. Which ones of these are really speaking to our hearts now that we've sat with them for a few months and we've listened to them and we know these artists, we know these songs. What songs are we going to put on there? And then the even bigger challenge is, how do we put the songs together, and how do you curate, a soundtrack that feels kind of all in the same spirit, but without sounding all the same and sound alike. So it's a very collaborative process. There are a lot of artists, I'm sure you know, that just they reach out and go, "Hey, I want to submit for the soundtrack." And to build on that again, we love working with big artists. We love working with the artists that everybody's familiar with. But one of the things that we decided to do was this thing called the Search that we have with NBA 2K, where we put an open call out to our community and say, "You send us your music, and we want to hear your music." If you're an NBA 2K fan and a player, there's all kinds of producers and rappers and artists, and we love the game. And so, we put a call out and we curate from that. We get, artists in that aren't, well known at all, and they're just from our community. And then we really love working with producers, as you know. I've got a very special place in my heart for producers. And I fake the funk as one sometimes, but like, it's just, I love making music, and I love the idea that I can make music by myself on a computer. So I have a special affinity for producers. We're doing a lot of things around that this year. But really the curatorial process and the music process is very collaborative. It's very, the two words we always go back to are future facing. And we want the game, especially NBA 2K, to be a platform for music discovery. Video game, anybody can license the Billboard Top 100 and put that in a game. I think it takes something more and special to look across the world and find music that's, like you said, going to resonate with the kid who's playing a video game for the first time, and this is the first soundtrack he's ever heard, and it's going to stick with him for the rest of his life.
Mm-hmm. And kind of a tough question here, like a tough one, because NBA 2K, I would argue, is one of the games that kind of has a cultural footprint or foothold in the music world. Like, it has a really strong tie to the music world. Is there pressure to continue to like have those big acts, the Jack Harlows, the Travis Scotts? Like, internally, would you say, is it kind of a balance there to like continue to have what the people want? Because I ask this because I noticed, like, when the track list, the last track list that was released for the one I was a part of, there was like the comments in that were very much so like, "Oh, why don't you have this?" Like, I feel like it could be internally, you see that stuff, and it could like be like, "Oh fuck, did we make the right call with this?" Or like, is there any kind of self-doubt or in the internal space from the music side?
That's a great question. And here's what I would say. I actually just got recently asked this by in another interview I did. Like, do you feel that pressure? And here's what I'll say. If you go on the internet and you look at a work of art, there are going to be comments. It's the most stunning thing you've ever seen. It's the most stunning video you've ever seen. It's the most incredible song you've ever heard. There will be comments in the comments section that go, "This is garbage. This is trash," And I think the trap that is easy to fall into with marketing a product like, as big as NBA 2K is, it's a huge product. It's globally renowned. And I have to be careful what I say here. But full transparency, I think the easy answer is, well, let's just go license, the Drakes, the Kanyes, the big names, the Sweeties, the Megan Thee Stallions. And here's the thing: those people make great music. They do. That's what $100,000 song sounds like. There are multiple parties that are writing the song, developing the lyrics, producing it, making sure it sounds A1. So of course we want to have that on our soundtrack. Of course we want to have names that people are familiar with, And truth be told, those artists are a part of our culture because there was a time that they were nobody and everybody knew who NBA 2K was, right? So there was a time that like Drake got his first NBA 2K placement, and I don't actually know when that was. I'm gonna go look this up now next week. But and what level was he at? And I hate doing correlational stuff. I never want to say that like because an artist was placed on X, that led to Y and Z. But I do think that, like you said, I think the NBA 2K soundtrack has a very special place in the music world and the music industry. I apologize. My dog is having a drink of water right now. I don't know if you can hear it. It has a special place in the music industry. And because of that, there are these huge artists that get like little kids when they find out that their song was selected for the game, and they're not going to tell us that. Their manager's not going to tell us that, but their label and their publisher will. And they'll go, dude, they're thrilled they're on NBA 2K, And the one thing I hear from so many artists always is, I have two bucket list goals in life. I want to win a Grammy and I want to be on the NBA 2K soundtrack. So there's a responsibility there about, it's a coveted, sought after place. And I think that any artist that makes the soundtrack, they are at the top of their game. They're wildly talented. It's something we want the community to hear and resonate with and identify with. Now, that said, I think it's equally as important for a platform like ours, and who has that space in the music industry or the entertainment world. I think it's not very interesting conversation if we're just licensing what you can hear on Rap Caviar. Like you already heard that last week on Rap Caviar, and the way that content is consumed, like I said, it's so immediate, and the fall off for a song now. I am old enough that I can remember buying an album on cassette and listening to it all the way through on both sides for months, because that's how you digested music. And now I listen to 100 songs a day easily because I'm on Spotify and SoundCloud, and it's throwing me recommendations, and it knows what I like. And it's like, here's an artist you've never heard before. So I think on the one hand, there's this challenge to make sure that we are top tier, we're prestige, we're the king, and it needs to sound like it and look like it. And that's where, the J. Coles and the Kendricks and those guys come in. On the other hand, I think there is so much incredible music being made, especially in the rap R&B space right now. Artists that are doing something, it feels very much like punk rock did kind of in the late, 70s, early 80s, where there's something very different and wild happening out there now. And we would be doing a disservice to our culture, to the game, to the community that we know is out there, if we're not kind of, we're showcasing these things too and really putting them on and going, yeah, this may be a little challenging, but give it a listen and we think you'll like it. And I think more often than not, we see that people really gravitate towards those new undiscovered artists, because like you said at the beginning of this, there's a moment where everybody hears something new for the first time and they feel some sense of like ownership and identification with it, and they want to hold it close to their chest. And I'll wrap this up with this. My penultimate moment as a human being experiencing life on this planet is when I hear that song for the first time, and I immediately become aware of two things. Oh my God, I'm in that moment, and I need to slow it down and cherish it and live in this moment. And I'm hearing these things my brain is hearing this for the first time and computing it for the first time. and I will never have this moment again. And two, you know, I'm like, I gotta go tell everybody about this song and this moment I had. And I gotta tell everybody about how amazing this is. And I do this all the time. And you know, I've been doing this for a long time. And 9 times out of 10, I get a, yeah, cool, bro. Sure, amazing, amazing song.
You don't get it. You don't understand.
But that one time out of 10 where somebody, you know, 3 weeks later goes back and goes, yeah, I kind of brushed it off at first, but then I went back and listened to it. And man, that is just so amazing. The production, the keys, the sounds he was getting out of the synthesizers. And that's what I live for is I want other people to have that moment. This world, especially right now, is so challenging and really kind of like, you know, we've been through some weird dark times last few years, and I don't think it's overly dramatic to say that anymore. I think, you know, you could say that in the past and it may have been a little overblown, but like it is, you know, the political climate in this country, COVID, you know, things that are happening, you know, in the world, you know, against people of color, things that are happening to disadvantaged communities. Just it's a stark time. It's a dire time. I think, you know, technology, the rise of technology, we're seeing kind of the real world for the first time. And I think, you know, if I can provide somebody with that moment where they are hearing a song for the first time and they're having that moment where they go, I've never heard anything like this, and I love this feeling. There's nothing like music to get you in that. And if I can provide that moment to somebody somewhere, you know, a kid playing the video game for the first time, you know, music fan who's never heard Insightful before, and they hear Last Time and they go, what is this amazing song? Like that's really what I live for. And that's where I want to exist.